Hello, everybody. Thanks for checking out the political Napalm. So, I had an interesting conversation with my girlfriend today as we were coming back from getting some dinner. And as we were driving back, I mentioned public relations campaigns that I studied back when I was in college. And there were some really popular ones that were case studies at the time, like the Delta plane crash, cyanide in Tylenol, a few others like that. Well, one of the ones that I mentioned to her was the fact that we had somebody come down, an actual public relations person come down and talk to us about a public relations campaign that their company was doing. And it was a turkey company called Wampler Longacre. A public relations lady had come down and talked about the fact that they were engaging in a public relations campaign to begin to thwart a buyout from the very popular chicken manufacturing company, Tyson. And Wampler Longacre basically got an unsolicited buyout offer from Tyson, which they didn't want. They didn't want to give up the company, so they began to resist. And this lady came down and discussed the campaign. And you can see here in the highlighted portion, this is actually what happened. So when Tyson tried to buy it out, their stock was down at about 20. And the CEO, James Keeler, said, well, we're not going to go ahead and do this. If we rise up to about $27 or $30 a share, we're going to go ahead and resist the buyout and you will be rejected. So they set about a public relations campaign to do as such and paint Tyson as a big corporate overlord, and Wampler Longacre was kind of local and higher quality, and they also engaged in some background shenanigans and ultimately thwarted the buyout or takeover attempt from Tyson. The reason why I bring this up is because when I was talking about Tyson, my girlfriend happened to mention that they were in trouble with the child labor laws. And at first, she thought it was because of the new child labor laws that Republicans had been pushing in some states. So I looked into it, and it turns out it's close, but not exactly. So if you're not familiar with these new child labor laws that is being pushed, Sarah Huckabee-Sanders, oh, I'm sorry, that's not Sarah Huckabee-Sanders. Sarah Huckabee-Sanders, little in joke, I've been calling her Batman Clayface for years, ever since she got involved in the Trump campaign. To me, that's Sarah Huckabee-Sanders. But Sarah Huckabee-Sanders down in Arkansas has been pushing a bill and approved a bill down in Arkansas to eliminate a requirement for children under 16 to obtain state documentation in order to work. The new Arkansas law is just one of a number of state bills loosening child labor restrictions, despite evidence that young children are already engaged in dangerous and exploitative labor throughout the country. This is not fear-mongering from anybody. This is actually true, and this is about ready to get proved. And it's Tyson that is kind of on the periphery of a really big deal. What Sarah's doing, what Sarah Huckabee-Sanders is doing is proving what George Carlin used to say in his stand-up, that the right wants you to give birth, and that's the only thing that they care about, and then once the child is born, they don't care. They stop being pro-life. The baby has been pumped out, and it can now go into the Pink Floyd machine and be churned into churchgoers, churned into the military, and now churned into child labor laws. So I looked up what was going on with Tyson just to see if they were really at the center of some child exploitation when it comes to labor, and in a way, sort of. It's still not great, but it's not actually Tyson. So I found these two articles, and they're from the beginning of March, which is, boy, really timely with some of this Republican push to have children working, clearly this looks like a very, very young child, and you could see he's completely decked out in what seems to be plant safety gear. And behind him, yeah, when I was that age and I saw those meat hooks hanging from things, that was in horror films. I can't imagine actually working in a company that features, at that age, that features things that were in the horror movies that gave me nightmares. I believe Madman Mars was one that I had seen in late elementary school that had hooks like that. And of course, the Friday the 13th and everything. But Springdale, Tyson Foods, and George's Incorporated were among 13 companies found to have used a company called Packer Sanitation Services, who hired minority workers ages 13 to 17. 13. In Tennessee, you cannot work younger than 14. And if you are working at 14, you, as the parent or the child, don't have to do anything. The company just has to verify your age. That's it. Imagine sending a 14-year-old off to work in a factory such as Tyson Chicken. This is a sanitation. Now, it's not actually Tyson Chicken who had these kids. It was worse in the fact that it was a sanitation firm that cleans their razor-sharp equipment and deals with the chemicals in their slaughterhouses. That is where this picture was taken from. It's on file with the Department of Labor of a child working in a slaughterhouse, which to me is absolutely abhorrent. When I was 14, I worked at a Burger King briefly. I did not have the maturity to work there properly. I was asked to clean the ladies' room, and I was extremely shy about it. I was like, I can't go in there. That's the ladies' room. Because I was sort of growing up with a certain level of respect to the bathroom of the opposite sex. So hearing that, like, I can't go into the ladies' room, get a girl to do that. And, you know, it totally is an adult now. Obviously, if there's nobody in there, prop the door open. You can clearly see it's getting cleaned and everything. But at 14, I just really wasn't thinking that way. I was very embarrassed and like, no, I'm not going to go clean the ladies' room. Needless to say, my time at Burger King did not work out particularly long because I was a little bit too young to truly be there. When I started working at McDonald's, however, I was 15 and I was considerably more mature and then rode that job out. And actually, there were things that happened when I was working at McDonald's that would mirror how I would work later in life and sort of how McDonald's taught me about myself as a teenager that I would also see in my adult life. But 13, 14-year-olds working in a goddamn meat packing place, cleaning their cutting instruments it's absolutely ridiculous. So our investigation found Packer Sanitation Services Systems had flagged some young workers as minors, but the company ignored the flags. When the wage and hour division arrived with warrants, the adults who had recruited, hired, and supervised these children tried to derail the efforts to investigate their employment practices. So now you have child labor violations and you have obstruction. The division found that the children were working with hazardous chemicals and cleaning the meat processing equipment, including back saws, brisket saws, head splitters, and investigators learned that 3 of the minors suffered injuries while working for the sanitation service provider. How, Clayface, can you see the reports of shit like this and push relaxed labor laws? Sanders signed the bill just weeks after the Department of Labor released the results of an investigation that found 102 children aged 13 to 17 illegally working dangerous jobs like cleaning meat processing equipment. Oh, look, they actually reference the Packer Sanitation Services case. How neat. 10 of those children were working at facilities in Arkansas, according to the investigation, and 25 were in Minnesota. So there's the tie. There is actually a direct tie between her and this investigation over here. The meatpacking industry is not the only one under investigation. The Department of Labor also said it launched an investigation into Tyson Foods, a food processing company with locations in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that produces Chewy and Nature granola bars, Lucky Charms, and Cheetos. The plant was found to employ migrant children. There has been a 69% increase in children illegally working in U.S. companies since 2018, the Labor Department said. It found 600 ongoing child labor investigations, and it found 835 companies in the last fiscal year that violated it, employing more than almost 4,000 children. And this article also talks about the fines that were levied against Packer Sanitation Services. PSSI has had to pay $1.5 million in civil money penalties. The child labor violations in this case were systemic and reached across 8 states and clearly indicate a corporate-wide failure, said Jessica Lumen of the Department of Wage and Hour Division. These children should never have been employed in meatpacking plants, and this can only happen when employees do not take responsibility to prevent child labor laws from occurring in the first place. This is disgusting. To have nearly 4,000 children being in violation of child labor laws, to see the hypocrisy of the right when they say that they are pro-life, which simply ends at birth. Pro-life for the right is conception to birth, and then it's it. They vote against the formula fixes that were happening during the formula shortage. They allow child labor practices to happen like this. They vote down SNAP and food stamp programs all the time. This is abhorrent to see children. I mean, forget 15 and 14, but to see a 13-year-old working at a meat packing plant and being around dangerous chemicals and cutting and saw devices, and then to know that there's injuries and that this company was doing it so systemically across multiple states, it's absolutely crazy. And when you see the left get tagged for all the problems with the crime in inner cities and Detroit and Chicago and New York City and everything, you have states doing this on the wholesale. And it's very easy to figure out which states are the ones that are actually doing this. And, I would take adult on adult crime any day than seeing this happen to children. And it's not just the children. It's what about the parents? Why is a parent allowing a child to work in these kinds of conditions? And on this article over here, according to the Department of Labor, at least 102 children from 13 to 17 were found to be working in these occupations and working overnight shifts. Oh man, that is beyond loopy. What 13, 14, what pre-18-year-old should be working an overnight shift? And I get it, you could be doing it during summer hours or when school is not in session, and these states do have some labor laws. Like Tennessee has got a labor law that says, okay, if you are 18 and under, you can only do 40 hours during non-school session. During school session, you can only do 3 a day for a total of 18 over the week. That's not that bad. I don't remember what I was pulling at McDonald's at that time, pre-18, but I know I was definitely working at McDonald's when I was allowed to drive on a junior license, like to work and back and everything. So I was probably pulling more than 18 in the 15, 16, 17-year-old range and everything. But this is beyond disgusting that this is happening, and then that there were laws going into effect that actually reduce these protections. Party of life, my absolute ass. This is Political Napalm, signing off.